So a big part of understanding the idea of a classroom identity, it simply means who is your class, right? If you can give your class an identity, who would it be described as? Theoretically and practically, it should be you. Every student should be a reflection of you. So when someone walks into your classroom and is there to observe you, what they're really doing is they're observing the class. They're observing the flow. They're observing the engagement. All of those different components that we use to kind of, give a scale to effective teaching. The problem arises when people try to have maybe instances of the perfect identity, or the identity, what I'm referring to is the perfect class or the perfect lesson. When you're asking all of the right questions, when you're tiering your questions by blooms, when you're asking essential questions for the specific unit. The students are not accustomed to that identity, right? That single act is not going to form you. It's not going to show who you are. It's the author James Clear talks about the creation of self-identity and how every day we take a vote for the kind of person we're going to become. That's the same thing with the classroom. You take a vote as to what type of class you're going to have. No single act will determine the identity. So when someone comes in to observe you, that single time, that's not going to determine who you are as a class. And then you get exposed. It's exposed over time because out of the mouth of babes, the children or the students will let you know, like, listen, this is not our identity in this class. This is not who we are. And so the question now becomes, how do we change our identity when it comes to the class? And I have the answer. It's going to take intentionality. It's going to take focus. And when I say intentionality and focus, what I'm referring to is the summation of events. So what do you do on a daily basis? That's the key. Because if you're consistently pushing the concepts that we consider effective instruction, such as effective student engagement, where it comes by, creative lesson planning, where you're incorporating a variety of pedagogical strategies. When you put all of those things together and you're consistent over a period of time, your worst lesson will be considered a best case scenario. I've seen it because I've entered classrooms with specific identities, and you can feel the atmosphere. You can see the environment. You can see the learning taking place. You can see the inquisition from students. And that is the difference. Because when it's a gimmick, right? That's the term that we use, or dog and pony show. It's easily recognizable. Right? And then it's kind of like when I was playing sports growing up, my football coach told me, he said, you are who you are when no one's watching. And I'm going to add a spin onto that, because you are who you are when you think no one is watching, because someone is always watching. They're watching the way you act. They're watching your body language. They're watching your speech patterns. They're watching everything. They're watching. And those someones in particular are students. The students are watching you. They're watching you through everything. And they're judging you. That is a place where every judgment takes place all the time. So for a person to say, oh, I don't judge, everyone judges. It's just the people that are self-aware, the people that are aware of those judgments and then correct them, allows them to work accordingly. So when we talk about high expectations, or when we talk about having a focus for the students, and intentionality for students, learning, and rigor. That term, when did it become such a terrible term? I believe because we have a preconceived notion of what rigor is. But that's a different conversation. So remember, it's extremely important for us to just focus on identity. Who are we in the class? What is our classroom identity? If you do not have one, then be honest, because it will show and it will be blatant. So, in a nutshell, develop an identity. If you elevate your class habits, you will elevate your classroom instruction. Peace.